been joining human design themed groups like on Facebook recently, and when those types of posts come up in my feed, if I feel like responding to it, I do, which is how it works for me because I'm a sacral generator. You gotta work with your own type, right? Put yourself in the place you need to be and let the mechanics work themselves out. I'm in a group that's specific to six line profiles. And if you don't know what that means, just a quick overview. The Chinese I Ching, there's something called a hexagram, and it's a combination of 6 lines that are stacked from the bottom to the top. So it goes line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6. And I kind of counted it in triplets like that because the hexagram is made up of 2 trigrams, the lower trigram and the upper trigram. And each of the lines of these trigrams and hexagrams are either yin or yang. They are solid or broken. I don't remember which is which. I never can. There's 64 possible combinations of this binary code because a yin-yang situation is a binary code, right? You're this or you're that. You're this or you're that. We live in this universe of duality. That's the illusion. And the reality is there's all this spectrum in there, but it is coded in binary. It's coded in 1s and 0s. So human design, I Ching. Human design pulls together multiple pieces of wisdom and has a unique look at it. But I Ching is one of the pieces, and that's where we get the hexagrams. There's 64 of them. They surround the zodiac. They surround the traditional zodiac. So you got your 12 zodiac signs. These 64 gates go around those signs, and then the lines of those are like split into little degrees around it. So if you ever see a human design astro wheel, it has the gates aligned in it as well, and they are numbered, and they are not in order, which is frustrating. I mean, they are in order from an I Ching perspective, but from a numerical perspective, they're not in order, and that feels frustrating. Okay, this is me being a sacral generator, speaking generator language again. Frustrating is a language of being a generator. When you look at the lines of the hexagrams, that they're sorted in an orderly way. Like each of the combinations is sorted into like quarters, and there's, it's you got to take a look at it. We'll show you sometime. Maybe I'll put a graphic up. Who knows what I'll do. Those gates, they're hexagrams. In human design, they're called gates, and they correspond to gates within your body, your physical body, your meat vehicle, whatever, your consciousness vehicle, this thing that we're in, this whatever we're being, this form with consciousness inside of it. Well, it has a design that looks like a circuit board. And the circuit board is a map of chakras or energy centers and the pathways between them, which are called channels. And at the end of each channel within one of these energy centers is the location of a gate, which corresponds to those 64 hexagrams in the astrological wheel. So as above, so below. As above, looking in the zodiac, and so below in your body. You have the entire design in your body, the whole chart, the whole circuit board. But when you look at your pattern, when you pull up your bodygraph, it's called, you can go to a number of different websites to look at your free bodygraph. And then there's a number that are going to try to sell you stuff, and that's fine. There's a number of people that you should definitely pay them money to tell you human design things. There's a lot of really good practitioners out there. There's a lot of woo and a lot of whatever too. So, go with your gut, and especially if you're sacral like me, go with your gut. If you have a different authority, follow that. But, engage with what is right for you. There's no one truth. There is your truth, and that's the core teaching of human design. There is like a universal mechanism, and this is this gives you the roadmap to look at that, the literal roadmap, like the circuit board of your design. Use it if it speaks to you, and lose it if it doesn't. Your authority is there to be a guide for you, and this knowledge is there if you want to look at it. And it also, there's a lot of room to further evolve the knowledge and cross it over with other disciplines and stuff like that. So people doing pretty cool work in that so far, but there's so much potential and so much room. In any case, back to it, the profile, wherever the sun is in your time of birth, that will determine where the earth is, because the earth is always across from the sun in the zodiac wheel. It's just the way that it works. With human design, you don't just look at your time of birth. You look at 88 degrees rotation of the sun before you're born, which roughly corresponds to the third trimester, if you're curious. Those positions of the sun and earth are taken, well, not just the sun and earth, but all the planets. At that time, those positions are also captured. So you get two sides, the personality, which is black in your chart, and that corresponds to your time of birth, and the design, which is red in your chart, and that corresponds to 88 degrees rotation before you're born, or the third trimester, roughly. Okay, so the sun and the earth, when you do that 88 degrees rotation, you get a almost 90 degree cross. It's 88 degrees. So that's called your incarnation cross of the sun and earth energies at that position, for those positions. And there's like, gosh, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but it's like over 160 or 70, maybe more than that, different variations of incarnation crosses that can exist. That gives you the gate the sun is in or the earth is in the zodiac. But it's also specifically in one of the lines of that gate at your time of birth. And so your conscious and unconscious times, one of them will have one set of numbers and one will have another set of numbers. There's like two numbers that you'll have. And so you take the one that is black first and you take the one that is red second, and you put those together, and that's your profile. So me, I have 6 with my time of birth lines, my black lines, and I have 2 with my 88 degrees rotation of the sun lines. And so I'm a 6-2, a 6-2. And there's 12 possible ways that these lines can combine. So there's 12 possible profiles. And they're basically like an archetype of your conscious and unconscious role, persona, personality design. There's definitely room for people to like rebrand the storytelling on some of this, because like, first of all, I have a problem with the fact that the red stuff is called design, because like, first of all, we're talking about human design, and then you want to call a sub piece of that design. That's confusing as fuck. And it's not just human design, by the way, it's design of form. So you can do designs on pets and things like that. If you go to, I think I've seen this at geneticmatrix.com, but it looks like their tool, which you can use to pull up your bodygraph chart. I think they'll do a free read for you, but they have a service that, you know, if you pay for their tool, you can do readings on pets, and that's pretty cool too. I haven't looked at any of that, but yeah, it's design of forms. So it goes not just humans, it goes with animals, it goes with plants, and it goes with, like, I think the G center has like a single gate in it that is the design of, like, I don't know, some inanimate object. And Ra talks about all that shit. Was the originator of the knowledge. You can learn more about it all by searching, but go to jovianarchive.com. Just search human design and search for Ra on YouTube and watch a bunch of videos, and you'll get the idea. That's where I'd start, because that's the source. But like I'm saying, there's a lot of practitioners out there who are moving the needle and getting some really interesting products out there, like, that speak more on the level that people need to be spoken to. And that's the problem. Like, Ra spoke in a particular way, the knowledge had a particular angle, which was really good, very interesting, And then other people like Richard Rudd, who wrote the Gene Keys, like came along and have kind of evolved some of the way that it's spoken about. And if you put Ra and Richard Rudd next to each other, their voices are like distinctly different. It's interesting. I know Ra was a splenic manifester, and it comes across in the way that he spoke. First of all, like if you ever get any of the books that are from him, none of that is stuff that he wrote. That's stuff that he spoke, and it's been transcribed. Like his vehicle was speaking because he was a manifester. And splenic, very logical, rational sided, like non-emotional. That comes across. Then you get Richard Rudd and you read the Gene Keys, and like the language is like poetic, like it sings, you know, there's vibrancy in it, and it's not logical, rational, splenic feeling. I don't know what Richard's chart looks like, but it's a different design for sure. You can hear a different voice, and it's distinct. I would imagine that there's some throat definition in Red because the way that he communicates is distinct and I think definite. But so yeah, like in your chart, all the colored parts is defined for you. That's where the planets were at the time of your birth. It defines a pattern for you that is going to be your consistent energy. Like that stuff will operate in a consistent way for you. The white stuff, anything that's not colored in, that's going to be still in your body. It's part of you. You have an experience there, but it's going to be variable. It's going to depend on who is in your presence at any given point. It's going to depend on where the astral weather is, because the planets are still in transit all the time. We're always impacted by that stuff. So anyway, trying to think if there's other points that I was meaning to wrap up when I started talking about all this, because I don't want to leave anything out that I was fucking talking about. I'm trying to go back to the lines. I'm 6'2". I think I got back to it. Okay, so I've been in this Facebook group for six lines, and so if you don't know the archetype of the 6, and each of the lines 1 through 6 has their own little archetype, and you can learn about them, but the 6 works like this. It has a 3-phase life process. And the first phase is the trial and error phase. It's a phase of gathering information, really the information that you need to grow your wisdom. You gain that in your first phase of life, which shifts at Saturn's return around 2930. And that means Saturn has returned to the same spot that it was at the time of your birth, which it takes like 29 years for Saturn to go around the sun. So that's why it takes that long. But that's when you shift into phase 2 as a 6. And by the way, I'm talking about my profile, which comes from my Sun and Earth gates. But any of your gates in your profile that have a 6 in it, they will work the same way. It might not be your profile because it's not your Sun and your Earth. But if you have other gates that have a 6, they will work. That energy will work in this way. The second phase is so-called aloof on the roof. It's where you've gathered your lessons from phase 1, and it was a little bit painful. There were some hard knocks. You make some mistakes. You get knocked down, and you get back up again, but you go up on the roof. You retreat. You go up on the roof of the house. All of the lines of the hexagram are given an analogy to a house, and the 6 being on top is the roof. You can learn about the analogy of the house out there too. I'm not going to go into it because I will go down tangents for the end of time if I don't focus and tell my fucking story, and I'm trying. Okay, so the 6, you're on the roof and you're retreated, and you're healing and integrating the lessons from phase 1, what you gathered there. And the goal is that you will have successfully done that by the end of phase 2, that when you transition into phase 3, which will happen to no matter what, that you will be able to emerge authentically and not hypocritically. That's the challenge, because the 6 is the role model. That's the archetype for the 6. And you don't become the role model until you've gone through your growth and development phases. It's a transformative energy. There is a 3-phase life. You go through this path, no matter what. And you emerge, you're the role model. Which, what does a role model mean? It just means an example. Being an example can be good and it can be not so good. I mean, it's always good because you're there to give lessons to others through your example. That's the crux of what you're there to do as a 6. But role models can be authentic and they can be hypocritical. And you can be a role model of something that people should aspire to, and you could be a role model of something that is like a warning and a lesson to people, like, hey, avoid this. And so whether you are one or the other depends how well you do phase 2. And luckily you get 20 years. Phase 2 is long. It goes from Saturn's return to Chiron's return, and Chiron returns somewhere around 50-ish, I don't know. Between 50 and 60. I think it's closer to 50 than 60. So like phase 1 is longer than phase 2 a little bit. And then phase 3, you're going to come down off the roof. You're going to stop being retreated from society and relationships as much. And you're going to fulfill your role. You're going to be the role model. You're going to be visible. And you're always visible because you're on the roof. Like the 6, maybe in the trial and error phase, you're a little bit more like bumbling around and not necessarily as seen, but you're very seen in phase 2 because you're on the roof. You may not be engaging with people as much because you're aloof, you're up there, you're away from others. The only people who kind of like you let into your inner circle are those who have deep trust with you. It's soulmate energy and it's rare. So it's not common, the people who are gonna get to share roof space with you. That's just how it is for 6s. So anyway, the point is, I was in the Facebook group and somebody was talking about the 6th line. They were focusing on phase 2, the aloof phase. He talked about it not in terms of retreat, but in terms of being an outcast and rejection. And it struck a chord for me because that is also it. Like, to a degree, you're pulling back and retreating and withdrawing, but to another degree, you have your social connections throwing you out and shutting the door and things like that. Like, things fall apart for you relationally, which is hard because the 6 is a relational energy. It's transpersonal. It's upper trigram. Upper trigram lines are transpersonal. It's about relationship. So it's really challenging when you get tossed out and outcast and rejected by your relationships. And it's not all of them, you know, and it's not for the whole time, but it is an experience that you have deeply, deeply, deeply. And it's something, because I am now, I'm trying to put myself, I'm maybe about a dozen years into my aloof phase, so I have like an 8-pack left, and you know, I'm gonna savor every minute of it. But it's hard too because I have had a lot of ostracism, being outcast, being rejected, and some of this comes through my own, you know, stuff, but like it is something that comes externally as well, and it's just part of the way you're designed. It's the way it works. And I think that's what clicked for me by reading this post, is like, I think it freed me from feeling hung up and sad. I mean, I still feel sad, but like it freed me from feeling stuck on the fact of my rejections. Like, I feel, because I'm still wading through that. I'm in aloofness for another while. You know, I've been in aloof for a while, but I've got a while ahead of me, and it's been painful. Like, everyone talks about the trial and error phase, like it's rough and it's painful, and then you go aloof and you rest, and it's like, yeah, you rest, but it's also very painful. So I really hope that the role model phase isn't as painful. Okay, so quick story. Do you know who is a 6 who's in their off the roof phase, the role model phase? Who just, like, they just went into it? J-Lo. And do you know what she just put out this year was her, like, documentary and like music movie, which kind of like had it was noticed online. Like, there was a big trend around talking about it for a while on the socials. and it got pretty lampooned, I think. And J-Lo just generally, like, has been a little bit lampooned, and, like, a lot of people came out personally talking about, like, hey, I had this connection with J-Lo, or, like, I know a person, and, like, the negative stories that they would tell and stuff. Like, she just got, like, pummeled. And I'm like, oh, well, that might be what happens if you come down as the hypocritical role model. That might be what happens. This is just my read on the situation, by the way. I don't have passionate feelings about J-Lo one way or another. You know, I really don't. But I do have opinions. I just don't. I don't want to go into it any further. I don't have passionate feelings. I do have opinions, but not passionate feelings, and I'm not going to touch it. But I just think it is amusing that she's a 6, and I'm looking at that. I'm like, okay, there's the negative example. Let's go for the positive example. I'm like striving to make sure that I'm going to be the more affirmative version of the role model. That's my purpose. That's my hope. I think I got through everything I wanted to say about that, and I think that was kind of a lot. So I'm going to stop this now. Everything that I have said has been my opinion, respecting any real persons. That's all that I have to say about that. I'm going to go be aloof.